Hello and happy Wednesday, everybody. Here's what's coming up tonight on Now.
We did what we were asked to do.
A first look at what an investigation to DHHS uncovered about the alleged murders of Kendall Chick and Marissa Kennedy.
And stopping the cycle of child abuse. New moms and dads who strive to be better than their parents. Plus,
they don't walk the pets, they just leave them in the crates.
Keeping Fido safe while the family is on vacay. 3 things you need to know before you leave your dog at a kennel.
This is News Center Now. Before you board your pet for the long weekend, the Better Business Bureau says you need to be on alert for abusive or neglectful kennels. Hello, everyone. I'm Lindsay Mills.
And I'm Lee Goldberg. The Consumer Watchdog Group has a list of warning signs that pet parents should be looking for and shares a horror story of pet boarding gone wrong.
If you're among the millions of Americans traveling for Memorial Day weekend, do you have a plan for your pets yet? The Better Business Bureau says by now you should, whether you find a sitter or a kennel.
A lot of people find a business online, they don't go till the day of drop-off, and then they find themselves out of luck because they have nowhere else to leave their pet.
Paula Fleming works for BBB, watching out for consumers in Maine and throughout New England. The number of complaints for boarding businesses is spiking. She describes a recent example regarding a business out of state.
They did not bring the pet outside to go to the bathroom, and unfortunately the pet ended up having to hold going to the bathroom for 2 days. And when the owner picked up the pet, it was very sick, ended up costing in vet bills to try and figure out what was transpiring. And it was just an unhealthy condition and left the owner feeling guilty.
Excessive barking, panting, dogs will yawn when they're stressed.
Frank Billings is the owner of Portland's Happy Tails and Tiny Tails, an A-plus dog daycare and boarding facility, according to the BBB. He says the first step is finding out where your pet feels comfortable. Maybe an at-home sitter is best. Someone comes by to feed and walk your pet every few hours. Or maybe an overnight boarding facility works. He says there are 2 types: cage boarding, where dogs sleep in a kennel, and cage-free. Dogs can sleep wherever they decide inside the facility.
I think dogs need their own space.
When researching a boarding facility, Billings suggests an important factor to consider:
A staff ratio to dogs, because what you'll find is a lot of places will just pack dogs in.
He says a kennel should never say no to an impromptu tour.
Because the facility is doing a good job, you could walk through the door, take a look around, and they could show you every place the dogs are going to be.
And while you're at the pool, your dog could be too, because every member of your family could use a vacation. And by the way, that pool is a new feature at Happy Tails. It's meant to help dogs with arthritis or maybe recovering from some type of surgery get some exercise.
I want to go to a pool. I'm not a dog. I'm a human, but I still would like to go to a pool. Keith, can you help with this?
Cindy has a pool, I think.
All right,
Cindy,
we're all going to Cindy's.
It's a nice pool from what I recall, so I think that's a good place to go. She doesn't know that we're inviting ourselves over right now. Mild enough, for sure. 81 in Sanford, 75 in Portland, 76 in Lewiston. But look at Caribou at 49 degrees. Aroostook County has seen a totally different day than the rest of the state. Winds now turning onshore in places and going back and forth. So whenever they've turned onshore, temperatures have dropped along the coastline, now switching back to the north and west and driving back up. All right, satellite showing most of the state clear, but down East Maine and northern Maine did see some pretty nasty thunderstorms earlier today. They're all gone now, just a few showers left over Aroostook County. So those continue to move offshore over down East Maine. Tonight is mostly clear until early tomorrow morning when some fog rolls onshore over southern coastal Maine. Most of tomorrow, though, is sunny, but it is significantly cooler than today. Temperatures largely in the 50s, getting into the 60s by the afternoon, but that's about it. A couple of clouds Thursday night, and then Friday is our hot day with a lot of us in the mid-80s. We'll talk more about that and, of course, the holiday weekend in just a few minutes.
Clearly, our objective as a league and to all 32 clubs, which was unanimous, is that we want people to be respectful to the national anthem. We want people to stand.
NFL players on the field will have to stand for the national anthem or face a fine, but anyone who wants to protest following the lead of Colin Kaepernick will have the option to stay in the locker room during the Star-Spangled Banner.
Is a children's movie unknowingly grooming kids for sexual misconduct? It's a disturbing message. It has social media buzzing. It has parents very upset, some pledging to keep their kids away from the movie theater. It looks harmless. Show Dogs, about a canine police officer that enters a dog show undercover to try and take down a crime ring that steals expensive animals. It's rated PG, which by definition means parental guidance is suggested and that some scenes may not be suitable for children. Having children in the age group that this movie is targeting, I went to see it myself. The scene in question goes like this. One dog is about to enter the final stage of a show dog competition, and part of that includes his private parts being checked. He says, "I just can't do it." Another dog says, I know. The inspection of the private parts is the hardest part of the competition. You must go in your mind to your happy place. Then nothing can stop you." And that's the scene that has people upset.
This is actually really dangerous. Children learn a lot from TVs and movies, and we should be teaching them that no one should touch them without their consent, and certainly not teaching them that if somebody's touching them in a way that makes them feel uncomfortable, they just have to wait for it to be over.
The controversy over the 27-second scene prompted the studio responsible for the movie to release a statement which reads in part, "Global Road Entertainment and the filmmakers are saddened and apologize to any parent who feels the scene sends a message other than a comedic moment in the film with no hidden or ulterior meaning." The movie has been in theaters for less than a week, but social media reaction has been strong. Some, though, think there might be some overreaction. Cindy took her grandkids and saw nothing bad, and the kids loved the dogs. It was cute. While Kira said she feels people get offended over anything. Maybe it's time to stop sheltering our children so much. Still, the majority of people online will not be standing in line to see this movie.
I would not take my children to see this movie because I feel like it sends a subliminal message that grooms them to think that if they just disassociate while someone is touching their genitals, that it's totally okay without their consent. And I'm actually appalled that this was even in a movie and that we're even discussing this right now, to be honest.
Now, looking at systematic abuse in USA Gymnastics or in Hollywood, it's certainly clear that too many victims had been staying silent. The Me Too movement meant to change that, and maybe this heightened awareness could be a sign that the message is actually getting through. Lindsay?
Lee, thank you. You demanded answers after the deaths of two Maine girls.
Very limiting in terms of what we are able to share publicly about what we know.
What a DHHS investigation will reveal and what will remain confidential, that's next. And deaf Mainers are simply asking for movie theaters to comply with federal law, but is the bare minimum enough?
Unfortunately, there just aren't enough films that are captioned.
Something as simple as going to the movies can present a big challenge for deaf Mainers. Communicating with theater employees is a toss-up. Closed captioning devices aren't always user-friendly, and there are theaters in Maine that are not in compliance with the Americans with Disabilities Act or the ADA. So last week on Now, we explained that for change to happen, deaf Mainers and their advocates have to report that these businesses are not complying.
Katie, today you spoke with a representative from a local theater that violated the Americans with Disabilities Act.
Yeah, Leah and Lindsay. So the Nordica Theater in Freeport had no closed captioning devices for more than 4 years after it opened. Now that changed after Disability Rights Maine filed a complaint. The manager we spoke to today wasn't in charge at the time, but I did ask him if he thinks the current system is fair to the deaf community.
It's a complicated situation because, you know, the rules and regulations are to make it so that it minimizes the impact on anyone with any degree of disability, and there are multiple types of disabilities that are there. And they want to try and make it so that the experience is something that is enjoyable for as wide a range of demographic as possible.
Now, I also pointed out to Levasseur the ADA is the bare minimum. Deaf Mainers pay the exact same price, but because of the clunky devices, don't get the same experience. Meanwhile, IMAX and 3D films go above and beyond for people who can see and hear. Now, when asked if he'd be willing to do more than what's required, he says,
it's a circumstance where I am trying to educate myself as much as possible and you know, see how can I meet the requirements.
Nowadays, films are shipped to theaters in servers with many versions, including those with on-screen captions or open captioning. So the capability is there. Some theaters offer open captioning during specific days and times. Nordica Theater doesn't do it at all, although Levasseur said he would consider it. Their closed captioning devices, however, work in all of their auditoriums for all movies.
All right, Katie, thank you very much. Staying on top of
thank
that
you.
story. Appreciate it. Learning to be a better parent than the people who raised you.
You know, you want your child to feel loved and respected, and you want them to respect you. You don't want them to fear you. And I was scared of my mom.
How survivors are trying to stop the generational cycle of abuse, coming up next.
And severe storms rumble through southern Maine. Any more rain in the forecast? The answer's next. Tomorrow morning, the people of Maine will get a first glimpse into if and how the system failed Marissa Kennedy and Kendall Chick. The two girls died from brutal child abuse just months apart.
Citizens and politicians demanded an investigation, and the Office of Program Evaluation and Government Accountability is ready to release its initial findings. Christina Rex live in Augusta, where OPEGA will meet tomorrow morning. And Christina, the director says the investigation was more challenging than she had expected.
Yeah, Lee and Lindsay, people want to know what happened to Marissa and Kendall. And even with this OPEGA probe, some of those details will remain confidential. Director Beth Ashcroft says this initial report will answer some of people's questions, but those specific details won't come out.
And that's part of the frustrating part. You definitely feel like you want to share and satisfy, what is a real desire to understand what went on here.
OPEGA Director Beth Ashcroft knows more than anyone what happened to Marissa Kennedy and Kendall Chick.
We know it as well as anybody's ever going to know it, I think.
But a public report outlining systemic problems with Child Protective Services, launched because of the girls' deaths, will likely withhold most of those details.
But there won't be a report that's like, this is what happened to Marissa Kennedy and this is everything we know.
No.
State leaders like Senator Roger Cates, chair of the Government Oversight Committee, will see the report for the first time on Thursday, just like everyone else.
How do we know that other children are being properly taken care of in the meantime while we investigate this?
Well, we don't know that, and that's what creates some sense of urgency, and that's why we wanted to do this rapid response and get whatever facts we can out into the public as quickly as we can.
While we remain in the dark on details, Ashcroft says Mainers will get the answer to the question they've been asking for months. Did a DHHS failure contribute to the deaths of these two girls?
But what we won't know is, well, what are all the details behind why we say that?
Ashcroft says the investigation has been legally challenging. The Attorney General's office guided them through every step of the process. And it's been emotionally draining.
To be trying to tear that case apart from the vantage point of knowing what the outcome was has been tough.
So that report that we're going to receive tomorrow is only phase 1. Phase 2 of the OPEGA investigation is for the committee to outline any recommendations for necessary changes to DHHS, but that step could take several months. Lee and Lindsay.
All right, Christina, thank you. And DHHS is battling a disturbing cycle. A parent who was abused as a child is more likely to hurt their own child.
Abuse will never end completely, but there are programs to prevent it from starting in the first place. Chris, you met a new mom who was trying to stop the cycle of abuse in her family.
Lee and Lindsay, Athena Goldthwait says she and her siblings suffered years of abuse. The U.S. Department of Health and Human Services reports that 1 in 3 people abused or neglected as kids will go on to do the same thing to their own children. Athena admits she's made other mistakes in her life, but says she will never lay a hand on her kids. Araya McNeil is getting the childhood that her mother, Athena, never got.
For me, it was how I grew up. I didn't want that for my kids.
Athena remembers a childhood marred by alcohol and anger.
Yeah, it definitely happened quite a bit. Physical, emotional. Me and my brothers and sisters, but I would try to take it, you know, so that they didn't get hurt, but...
Abuse isn't the only hurdle Athena has overcome. She is sober now, 22 months drug-free, and she admits she could have given her older children better lives. She won't let that happen to Araya.
Needed to change that because they need me. Every kid needs their mom. Like, I still need my mom.
The U.S. Department of Health and Human Services says 1/3 of people abused or neglected in childhood will grow up to hurt or neglect their own kids. That didn't happen for you.
I can't. You know, you want your child to feel loved and respected, and you want them to respect you. You don't want them to fear you. And I was scared of my mom.
In 2016, Maine's DHHS investigated 8,279 reports of child abuse deemed necessary for assessment, a number that's dropped year to year since 2014.
And will she roll a ball?
Because of Athena's medication-assisted treatment for her substance use, DHHS was involved from the moment Araya was born.
I was really nervous that they weren't going to let us take her home.
DHHS recommended the Maine Families Program.
Yeah.
Natasha Turcott visits Athena, Araya, and Dad David on a regular basis for the Child Abuse and Neglect Council for Androscoggin County.
When families do bring up that they were physically or mentally abused as children, we can really pinpoint of like, okay, so you were abused and you don't want to do that to your child, so what can we do?
Androscoggin ranks 5th out of Maine's 16 counties for reports assigned for child protective assessment.
You know, that's always in the back of our mind, and we just try to keep an open ear and look out for any signs of that.
And if you say, give it to me.
In addition to tracking a child's development, family visitors like Natasha also teach parents skills like discipline or redirection, appropriate ways to interact with kids without violence or anger.
A lot of first-time parents get pregnant and, you know, are excited about having a baby, and then baby comes and then they're like, oh, what do I do with this baby? A family gets enrolled prenatally. It gives them more time and us more time to educate them on what to expect when they have a newborn.
Giving children like Araya the upbringing they deserve, even if her parents weren't as fortunate.
I don't want my kids to be afraid of me. I want them to feel like they can come to me when they need me.
You can pull it out.
And the services from the Advocates for Children are free because of federal and state funding for the Community Partnership for Protecting Children. Now, Lee and Lindsay, one of the difficult parts about these stories that we've told today and yesterday is that there's no real tangible solution. You know, for example, like brushing your teeth twice a day is more likely to prevent cavities. In many cases, parents just have to be willing and determined to stop or prevent abuse. Now, if you missed Officer Jamie Roby's story yesterday, she's a York police officer who emancipated herself from an abusive home. You can see that story right now on our website and mobile app.
This picture is so close, it feels like you could reach out and just pet this cat, and then you get a good look at the teeth and you go, yeah, I'm probably not going to do that. Susan from Walpole found these pictures on her game camera. She sent them to us today. Pretty kitty. Thank you for sharing, Susan.
It's getting to be about that time that if you're going out, whether you're hunting or whatever it is outside, as soon as you enter like any sort of tree area, you need the bug spray.
Oh yeah, and I mean we talked about a lot about ticks, but mosquitoes starting to come out. That's one thing that I've noticed about living right near the coastline along Maine. There aren't many mosquitoes here. Actually, that's a brain drops, isn't it? I don't think I've ever been bitten by a mosquito
come to my house.
within a mile of the coast.
I got plenty.
Yeah.
I'm on the coast.
Yeah. You get mosquitoes where
Oh,
you're at?
yeah.
You're at? All right.
I got trees, so.
This sounds like a verifier. Yeah, that's the trees. It's probably
Yeah, I got
mainly
lots of
that,
trees,
a lack of trees. Anyhow, beautiful day today. Pretty much statewide, but we'll talk about the exceptions here in a second. 82 for a high in Sanford, 77 in Portland, that's the current temp, 78 in Wiscasset, and 79 in Augusta. Again, most of us are a really nice day. However, we did have some pretty nasty thunderstorms across northern Maine into down east Maine. Skowhegan saw some hail, Pittsfield as well. So these are areas that saw a little bit of severe weather while the rest of us were seeing nice conditions. And here's that squall line that came through now offshore. Shows you how cool the air is just to our north, though. Some snow there. So we're in the warm sector, but there's a big air mass clash going on across northern Maine right now, and that's why there's actually a frost advisory for parts of Aroostook County tonight into early tomorrow morning, as temperatures will drop into the 30s there. No shock for a lot of people who live there, though. Hour by hour forecast showing us any cloud cover is very minimal overnight tonight. Now tomorrow we might start with a little fog along the coastline, but I think the vast majority of the day is sunny and pleasant tomorrow, but substantially cooler than today. Even with the sun, 50s through most of the day, probably topping out 61, 62 in a lot of spots, so almost 15 degrees cooler than today. A few clouds overnight Thursday, and then Friday is a warm day. Temperatures in the 80s, mid 80s in most spots. Here's what I'm thinking for Friday afternoon. Beach day, 84, 84, 86. 85 in Augusta, and 83 even up into Millinocket. Quickly talking about the weekend here, we're continuing to feel like Sunday is the worst of the weekend days. Saturday is mild. There'll be some scattered showers around. I don't think there's a ton of showers, though, on Saturday, and most of them over the central part of the state. Then we get the front to the south. We get back to a cold fronted on Sunday. So 50s on Sunday, some clouds, some showers. I do not like Sunday. And then Memorial Day, we might be able to get a squeeze play out of it, meaning a shower early and a shower late, but the middle part of the day could be good, should be good. That's how it looks right now, at least Tuesday and Wednesday. Next week, I got to tell you, Jess Conley took next week off. And either she's good at long-range forecasting, or she's really lucky.
That's insider trading, isn't it?
It is.
That's a lot going on.
I don't know. Yeah. We've all taken some bad weeks off, but next week looks.
I believe with her hand, she just said, "Girl, bye."
I know. Next week looks great overall.
Thanks, Beyonce. Yeah. Appreciate that, Jess. All right, what is going on with ranked choice voting? Does anybody actually know? The issue is now back before the Supreme Court, and it's just one of the many local stories coming up on News Center Maine at 5:30. Sydney's here to tell us what else we can expect.
Hi, guys. Among the other things you can expect, a graveyard with tombstones that went undisturbed for centuries has been vandalized now in the town of Lebanon, and police say they know who did it. We're going to have that story. And 4 months of paid parental leave. 4 months for new moms or dads, while local business is going out of its way to keep expecting parents happy. Those stories and much more ahead at 5:30. Back to you.
This guy's listening.
I will never have to go back to work.
I knew you were listening.
I am all in on that.
Brain drops when we come back.
Overwhelming there. Okay, let's check this out. This is from Canada, but these are dust devils, which are usually harmless. But look at this. They're trying to play baseball here. This is one of the stronger dust devils I've ever seen. It throws the chair, and then watch how it points, it pins different things up against the fence there. So I like the one guy. Can we play it again? I like the one guy who just weathers it. Look at that guy. He's like, my beer's here, I'm not going anywhere. Dust devils are not tornadoes. They're usually not dangerous. They're caused by heat at the surface and it being much colder aloft. So you typically see it on these nice bright days, often in the desert Southwest.
I'm worried about this young lady.
Yeah,
because
so
she sits up by the fence and is watching it.
They don't usually do any real damage, but if she got caught with that chair, it would have been some damage. But they're pretty cool. You don't see them a lot in Maine, and you see them often in places with dust where you can see them.
They make them tough in Canada. All right,
they do.
News Center 5:30 starts right now.